Hi, Gabriela. Welcome to Retro Next podcast.
So excited to chat with you.
So excited to have you here. So tell us a little bit about yourself. You run the arts in middle high school and take circus classes. So talk to us about.
Loved them so much. Yeah, I used to work as the program coordinator and a teaching artist for a nonprofit that promoted literacy around Tennessee through creative writing classes, music production classes. Shout out to Southern Word. They were awesome. And that was where I got a lot of my working experience with teens, young adults, and writing and literature and things like that. And then, I did go to an arts middle and high school where we took a bunch of weird classes. You chose a major when you were in 6th grade. Yeah, I was a creative writing major, but then we had to take our electives. And I had to take a circus class where I'd go to class and learn to walk on a little tightrope, ride the tiny bike, juggle.
Okay, so obviously you were creative writing since 6th grade, so you had the writing bug and stuff. Were you writing stories to your classmates or any of the,
I
you were
was
giving them like a little soap opera going on?
writing always. I grew up with a lot of cousins.
Yeah.
Big Hispanic family.
Yes.
And I was like very young, I'd write them plays. And then they'd have to go perform the plays in front of the family.
Were you?
And I'd always loved.
Were your eldest granddaughter, eldest daughter, like the oldest son?
I was the eldest granddaughter. Yes, I was.
Yes. So I was in the second eldest from one side of the family, and then the eldest in the other side of the family, and we're bossy like this. And we're the ones who are like raising the children, taking care of everyone, and we're telling them we got to entertain them somehow.
I'm like, I know what we got to do. This is not playtime. This is work.
Yes.
Yes, I've loved books and writing and literature and language since I was very young. Before I went into kindergarten, I knew how to read because every night my dad was reading to me. All through the day, my mom was reading to me. And when I was like 5 years old, I sat down with my mom and I was like, Mom, I need to know what I'm going to do with my life because it's time to, you're 5. No, you don't. Again. So like, yes, I do. And she said, you love books so much. Why don't you be a librarian? And I did not like the librarians because they made me give the books back. And that was cruel to my 5-year-old mind. I was like, these books, no, I can't give them back. So I said, no, I can't be a librarian. And she said, fine, then why don't you write the books? And I said, fine, I will. And it just stuck.
You're like 6th grade, you got to pick a major, not even 18, not even college. You pick a major in 6th grade. Creative writing.
Yes.
And now look at you. You have a book.
I have a book. That's wild.
Yes, it's easy to write a book, but to get it published, it's a whole business mindset that you have to do because you have to write the book and then publish the book and work with the publisher if you're working or publish it self-published. But then you have to market it. Then you have to do things like this and talk about your book and get readers excited about your book. So it is hard.
I've talked to friends who are also super passionate about writing, but aren't doing it professionally. Sometimes I'm like, ooh, I'm a little bit jealous of you because they get to just sit there and work on the writing and the stories. And then suddenly you put me who my thing is to work alone in silence where nobody's watching me and talk to people.
I'm like, no. It's like I think there's ideas. I'll be a full-time writer and it's just gonna be writing all day and this is my passion. I'm like, I'm sorry, but it's not like that. Like, you have to sell the book. You have to be a salesman and a salesperson, and also you have to be able to market and figure out like ads and social media and like all these different things that are part of getting a book because you want to get sales, and in order to get sales, then you can write more books and you can pay rent and you can pay,
exactly
food and basic necessities. Right now, it's really hard. It's just part of it.
Yeah, I think that was something that led me to rom-coms. Yeah, because when I was first signed as my agent, I was signed with a dystopian novel about the circus.
That's so cool, but at the same time, Like weird to have it in 2020.
Yup, because I was signed with him in 2020, and so it was a very, like, weird time where, like, dystopian stuff was not as hot because we were
Yeah.
living in the dystopia, and so it was what I really loved for a long time,
Yeah.
and I, like my favorite writer is Stephen King.
Yeah.
I am very in love with kind of, like, horror, slipstream, sci-fi genres, the weird stuff, and then so in 2021, my sister unexpectedly passed away.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Thank you. And the day after that, I met the man who is now my partner
Oh my
for the
god.
past 5 years.
It's wrong.
Yeah, it was wild and confusing, and my first big experience with loss, and then my first, like, actual boyfriend, and that was very strange and very confusing, and when after she had passed, I can't read all this dark stuff right now. I can't write this dark stuff. It used to be this escape and this, like, adventure for me, and it didn't feel like that while I was holding that grief.
Yeah.
When I was like, "I just need anything that can take me away from this."
Yeah.
And so I was like, "I'm gonna read a rom-com."
Yeah.
And I had again, I'd gone to the art school. I then majored in creative writing in college, was part of the, like, English department, and I'd got a little bit pretentious where I was like, "Rom-coms, romances, psh, like,
Yeah.
why would I read that?" And then I started to read them,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Wait, what have I been doing this whole time?" Because I think a lot of times, and I think there's so many reasons for it, but society and kind of our culture can, one, just push down things that give women joy, and also push down, I think, those things that have the happy endings, the hope in them, because it can feel very hopeless in the world. And sometimes that just feels disingenuous. And so I felt that. And also, there are a lot of people writing in genre fiction because it's exciting and it's fun. And I think people are like, "Oh, all rom coms are bad." And it's like, oh, there are just a lot of rom-coms. There are a lot
Yeah.
of genre books, and it creates a bigger pool of books. And in there, you're going to find some that maybe you don't vibe with, that don't feel as solid to you. But because again, it is that big pool, you are also going to find gems and beautiful things and things that you love. And that happened to me. And that's all I was reading right after my sister passed. Just like, give me every romance and rom-com I can find. I just want to sit in these.
There's a misconception about because it has, by the way, romance always has an HEA. It's the rule of the genre. That's one thing you want to do. If it doesn't have an HEA, it's a love story. But there's a lot of misconception that it's just because it have a happy ending that it's easy to write, or it isn't really difficult because you have to innovate. You have to do it differently. You have to also make the relationship, the the character's art grow from that experience, and to see that growth and to see that specific. It's as the author to actually pull an experience and make it seem that it's actually worthwhile for the reader to find a satisfactory ending. Just because it
Yeah.
has a happy ending doesn't mean that it's going to be satisfactory. And that's like the challenge of the author is like how to innovate, how to actually provide this character from point A to point C with a romantic element, and at the same
Yes.
time make it worthwhile. Make it like that you feel like
Yeah,
you're feeling good and satisfied.
absolutely.
And there's so many, but at the same time, there's a book for everyone. I found it, I was always, when I started reading romance, it was about 10 years ago. And at the time, I thought I was like, read women's fiction, I read dystopian, I read what was popular. And I remember just being like, I grew up reading Sue Valley High, which is soapy, gossip girl,
Yeah.
like, these very soapy stuff. And I realized I was like, I love the romantic element. Even with fantasy, I needed something, some romantic element. And so in 2016, I think it was Anna and the French Kiss for the YA
Like,
I remember reading and binging those, and I was like, I really need more of these. And I was in my 30s, and I was like, oh, let's just do new adults, the college kids, the off campus. And that's what opened up the doors. And I was like, wait, there's a whole genre of books. And the thing with romance is there's so many different ways. There's rom-coms, there's contemporary romance, there's cozy romance, there's mystery romances, there's romantasy, there's all the different things. So there's a little bit of everyone for everyone. You can find there's book for you. And if you don't like men, there's monsters. If you don't like monsters, there's aliens. If you don't like aliens, there's fairies. If you don't like, if you like women, there's sapphic. If you like polyamory, everyone's welcome. If you don't like love triangle, there's poly. If you like cheating, there's cheating. Everything. There's every red. If you like toxic red flags, there is. And I think it's because the genre has that ending. It has pushed authors to innovate, to come up with backstories, come up with stories that are like reflected to their own experience or somebody else's experience, and actually represent that reader and find themselves there.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I am just super passionate about. Is like I mentioned, my family is Mexican Colombian, and I remember writing when I was very young, always writing very similar characters. And one day in high school, I think it was, I looked at my characters and I was like, how come all my main characters default white? And I couldn't really answer that question other than that was most of what I had read and been given. And there are a lot of those books that I love still, that I love so much, but also being like, okay, my childhood, my culture growing up was very different than these, and has brought so much into my adult life growing up that way, and the way I make decisions and the way I see relationships. And so I was like, what if these characters start to have cultures like me, start to have backgrounds like me, and suddenly writing characters was a lot more relatable, a lot more fluid, came a lot easier to me because I was like, oh, I know this. This is, and then I was looking again at a lot of the books I had seen with Latina like representation, and a lot of them ended up being like this like deep dives into trauma, into the racism, into like pain. I loved genre fiction, like I had mentioned. I loved sci-fi, dystopian, romance, all of these. And I was like, I want to see these characters there. Because when I walk into a room, I'm not just like, I'm Gabriela, I'm Hispanic. Like, I walk into a room like, I'm a person because I'm a person. And so then being like, oh, what does this look like coming into my work? And it's just something I love so much and that I care about so much. And in a lot of the books that I love so much in romantic comedy genres, there's a lot of representation there that I was able to experience, and like, oh my gosh, this is real. I can do this. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we need more joy. I think, especially, first of all, being Latina is it's not monolithic. We're not all the same. Like, your Mexican family is different from your Colombian family.
Exactly.
Like, and even the Mexican, like, the experience is very different from the Mexican I consume in the 80s and 90s is very different from what we have now, because the media, that we got the same media. I'm from Puerto Rico. I'm from the island of Puerto Rico, but I've been in the diaspora for half of my life. My family's still in Puerto Rico. So I'm toggling like the different cultures and stuff. And I think we need more representation because we need to share our experiences. We're all not the same. Not just because you speak Spanish is the same Spanish. Bad Bunny Spanish is very different from Carol G Spanish. Like, we have different things, but we're different. We say certain words a certain way. We have different anglicisms depending on where you are in the diaspora. And I think in some ways, like, not everyone has the same experience and not everyone has the same pain. We have joy. We celebrate things. We like to party. We like to do things like we have big families, and sometimes we don't have big families. Like, sometimes, like, the experience, like, everyone has same primas. It's like, I
Yep.
see some of them, but my one side of families, my mom was only child. So I only had my brother in that side of the family. And I think it's like having written work, having authors come in and share their experience, but also share their characters' experiences and actually share representation helps you. Also, like mental health, like how do you handle grief? And it's so different. And especially how to handle grief from a family point of view,
Yes.
and then our own point of view, who may have been living in the diaspora, who may be like in a way different way. Like, I go to therapy, my parents don't go to therapy.
Yep.
Same here. Like, it's layers of experiences. And I think it's like coming to place. And I think books like yours, especially for YA, it's like a great place to bring representation and to say you matter, you're seen, and here's a ways for tools and like ways that you can go up. So we need this.
I agree. I was talking to someone recently about just representation and the importance of it, and how not only does it allow someone to be like, look, I can be a main character. There are people like me who are important. My story is important, but also lets other readers see I am not the only person who can be a main character. People around me have stories that should be centered too and that are worth hearing and worth reading. And so I think, just more representation of tons of people, different types of people, is important for everybody around too.
Yes. And I think we just need joy. I think there is a place for joy. I think
Absolutely.
where we are, I think in some ways we need hope. Books like yours gives us hope. It's a terrible time. And I know it's a terrible time to do dystopian, but like maybe a rom-com may be the right time right now, where it gives us hope and it gives us a place for us to see what is possible, to see ourselves in books and see ourselves like we matter. So yeah. All right, let's talk about your book, How to Love When You're Gone. So talk about the elevator pitch, what readers can expect from your book.
Yeah, so we have two main characters, Maite and Augie. They are set up on a really bad blind date. It goes very poorly. And they're like, we don't ever want to see each other again. Out of my life, goodbye. But then their friend groups merge, so they have to at least pretend to like each other. So we've got sort of like a enemies to fake friend. And then Maite has a death in her family and is trying to process that, while Augie, who wants to be a writer very badly, is maybe the way to help her is to write her story, which is there's a lot of sweetness there until but maybe I'm not going to tell her right. Maybe I'm going to tell her till I can get into a good college with her story, which
that's
not great.
That looks like disaster, and that's why we love romance, because it was like, the heck it's gonna work. How is this gonna work? And especially when you're dealing with 18-year-olds, so you're like, their full frontal lobe is not fully formed. Oh, this is gonna work.
Yes, so that was, I love it.
And it ends with a happy ending. So that's where the listeners can pick up. It's gonna end. It's gonna work. Gabriela did the job. It's your make it work. But you're like, what is this setup? But I love the fake friendship. I love the fact that we deal with grief, and that this book makes you laugh, but at the same time cry at the same time. And it's like all the emotions. And I think in some ways that's what we need.
Yes, absolutely. I love, because that's just like life every day.
Yeah.
Is these ups and downs and the highs and the lows, and they all exist together to make life strange and confusing and difficult to navigate. And I think especially with grief, that was something that I have discovered with my therapist, was sometimes I talk about grief as like a backpack that I put on and I'm going to be wearing it forever. I can still do everything in life that I want to do. I can still keep going, but there is this thing that will always be with me. And sometimes it's really heavy, and sometimes I don't notice it at all, but it's there with me now. And it's like part of me now. And that at some point you just have to be like, all right, this is mine now. This is what I carry now. And what does my life look like now that I am carrying this?
Yeah. It's like your life would never be the same. And at the same time, it's one step forward, 10 step backs. And it's not linear. You cannot practice. And as eldest daughters, we want to control the timing and when we can cry and when we can do the thing. And the reality is that it catches you in the most inopportune ways. And you're like, okay, but can we get a break? Yeah. And that's where laughter comes in. That's where other distractions, and maybe distractions, but they're just a way for you to manage the grief, manage the feelings.
Yes.
That how big it is and actually make it manageable for you.
Yeah, there's a type of therapy that I've explored. It's called DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. Love DBT.
Things can coexist, the good and the
Yes.
coexist in the middle. It is a great. That's a therapy that I do. It's so life-changing.
Yes, it is life-changing for anybody because basically it's just learning to talk kinder to yourself in your head and to just experience life in a kinder way. And one element of DBT is cultivating positive experiences and distraction. So it's, you don't want to be distracted all the time, but there are times when that is going to be the best thing, when building those positive memories, those positive associations, these beautiful moments can help you when you're in those places of despair, of pain, of being like, I know this isn't all. This isn't forever. This isn't the only thing that belongs to me. I have joy that has existed and will exist again. And even if I'm in the muck right now, because sometimes you are in the muck and you can't just jump out. But I think that is what hope looks like there, is being like, this has existed once, it will exist again. I just got to make it to it.
It's the glimmers. It's like we're glimmers, the little ideas, the little things that can shift the mindset, that can shift the space, and ebb and flows. It's like being, and I think one of the things about DBT is in mindfulness. It's about being in the present moment, not being in the future, which is where anxiety may live, or in the past, but even in this present moment, how do I feel? How do I sense? How do I actually coexist? And then knowing that the present can change at any moment, knowing that actions you can take if you listen to your wise mind as opposed to your emotional mind or your logical mind. I understand, like, we're talking about therapy in some ways, but it's life skills. It's actually how to manage yourself and manage your neurosis in a way that actually can you survive. And I think in some ways, living in 2026, I live in Florida, which is
okay,
an interesting place. And I have to tell you, living here, finding the resistance, because I am very brilliant. I'm likely socialist in many ways. I want social services. I want my tax dollars. It's very interesting to be like in this place where everything is despair. Everyone's like drinking the Kool-Aid, and you're like, but that doesn't work. And it's like, how do I maintain glimmers of hope? How do I maintain myself like a person to take action that feels right? And, it's a lot of it. It's like staying in the present moment. It's about what can I control? What can I do? And how can I actually make an impact, a positive impact that lifts my values as opposed to everyone else's values? And I think the practice of this type of therapy has helped me stay grounded and stay in a place where I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to focus on my representative because she drank the Kool-Aid. She was like, oh, we can go to Iran. I'm like, lady, my gas is expensive. You don't want to go on a stupid war that no meaning because I'm a girl. I already have been in an oil war for 20 years, so this is not new. And so it's okay, what can I do for me? I'm going to sign up to be a poll worker and work the elections, because they need help. And that's an easy way to monitor the elections. And the other aspect is I'm going to focus on a state legislature, like the statewide elections, because at the end of the day, my social services are the ones that are going to be affected. And who makes the decision? This is state. It's the state legislature. And that makes it much more manageable than having to change my whole community of the month.
For sure.
And it's like a place where like, what can I control? What do I allow it to be? And I think it's managing the grief. It's managing those big emotions and with tools that are helpful. And at the same time, finding those glimmer of hope and finding that place of, you know what, it's going to be okay. It was okay before. It always works out. It's going to work out the next time and the next time and the next time.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So we got to talk about book recommendations. Some books that you want to recommend our listeners to pick up. I know you have some rom-coms, so which I'm very excited for.
I think so. The first YA rom-com that I had read right after my sister passed is Our Way Back to Always by Nina Moreno, who is also a Florida author. She's phenomenal, but her book, Our Way Back to Always, also deals with grief. And finding that while I was dealing with the same thing, seeing these young people navigating it, these young people going through it and seeing what that looks like was so cool to me, so beautiful to read. And again, to find that, to see this balance of the romantic, cute moments with this little couple, and then the painful moments that they're going through and the navigation of all of it was so wonderful. Nina Moreno also is Latina, and she had Colombian representation. And so there were like little traditions that my family does that were popping up in the book. One of my favorites is on New Year's Eve, you're supposed to eat 12 grapes so that you can have luck in each month.
I am from the witchy Catholic superstitious part of it, where we have
Yep.
the guilt and we feel like we have a superstition. You gotta also take the luggage if you want to travel. You gotta go out with the luggage and travel around because you gotta move things.
Yeah, yes, and those things are, again, such like the lovely, colorful, beautiful things I remember from growing up.
Yeah.
That I hold so close to my heart. And one of the characters is going to a New Year's party. It's her first time being away from her family for New Year's. And so they send her in a bag of 12 grapes that she has to eat at midnight. And it was so lovely to read that and to see that. Oh my goodness, I love that book.
I am adding this so fast.
Yes, highly recommend that one. It is some of the most important reading that I had done about grief. And that helped me get to a place where there's just a lot of talk about how grieving is just love in a different costume. And that was something that allowed me to grieve when I felt like grieving was wrong or that I didn't deserve to, or that it wasn't right for me to, because my relationship with my sister had been very, very different, very non-traditional. She was a lot older than me. She was intellectually disabled. And so we weren't able to communicate in the same way that I communicate with my younger brother. And so when she passed, it's like, what am I allowed to grieve if I wasn't the sister that I wish I would have? And being able to learn from that book and just be like, this is showing the pain that I feel now is just showing the love that I do feel and that it is allowed to exist, even if it's weird and confusing and complex, because grief is weird and confusing and complex.
It's complex. It's a complex emotion. It's so hard. And it's the reason why so many authors write about grief is because we all experience it at one point in our life. We all have experienced some sort of grief or some sort of like lost childhood, or lost of person in your life. And I think in some ways it's like it shapes how we see the world. It changes cellular. It changes the whole worldview changes. Because
Absolutely.
you miss that person, whether you have a good relationship or not a good relationship, or like that in the lived experience, but in that past experience, it's the belief of, can I love you? Can I still love you? Can I still have you in my presence?
Yes.
And I think it's allowing yourself to experience those emotions that are really difficult, and they're wide range, and there's good and bad and everything in between.
And there, a lot of times you don't get to pick when it happens, what's going on. Grief is so personal to the person because relationships are so personal to the person. The way I am going to grieve And the things that I'm going to grieve are going to be very different than what maybe my mother is going to grieve, which is different than what my tias are grieving. And then all of us coming together, it can be so difficult to even be able to communicate about what's going on because we all see it so differently and we all feel it so differently. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just difficult.
It's just a difficult thing. It's just, I wish I can tell you there's one way to go. There isn't. Yes. And you just have to experience, and every person has their own experience, their own relationship. It's such a unique DNA. It alters your DNA, and then it's just your own lived experience. And when we die, people are going to grieve us, and they're going to have their own lived experience, and unfortunately, we cannot control how they grieve. Not to get morbid, but it's like, yeah. Comes down to it. It just is. It's a part of life, unfortunately.
Yeah. So that was something. So that book, love that book. Highly recommend it. Another one I love, another YA rom-com is Dungeons and Drama by Kristy Boyce. You read that one?
I have it in my TBR because
gosh.
It's a D&D and the covers are so cute. And I know there's a follow-up with it. I'm like, I really need to just bump it up.
I just love the cover of Dungeons and Drama. And then my publisher emailed me and was like, hey, she's doing your cover. This is wild because she is one of my favorite, Liz Parks, one of my favorite cover artists ever. And then suddenly they're like, yeah, that's who we got for you. And that was a dream. But that book is, it's so much fun. And it is such a good example of a slow burn like Friends to Lovers, because sometimes I'll read about that and it feels like you can feel each stage. And it's it's very choppy. I can tell when they move from this to this and from this to this. But in Dungeons and Drama, you're just watching them until the romance like hits. And you're like, wait, when did that happen? When did they fall in love like that? But you believe it. And so I love that book. That book also, my partner and I, we were traveling, and something that we started doing very early in our relationship is we would just read to each other. We'd get the same book because we were long distance for a while. And so we'd get the same book and then we would just read out loud to each other. And we still do that. And so that was one of the books that we read out loud to each other. And we were in the middle of a airport cafe, and we were just sobbing as that book finished. And it was so fun. And it was also just created some really cool conversations with my partner and I about like rom-coms being read by men and by like young men and boys, and how like there is so much worth there. Because there is this like, again, kind of like cultural societal thing that's, I don't know, I don't understand girls, they're just weird. And yeah, okay, sure. But I've had to read books about boys since I was like a child. And I love
white men.
Yes, specifically. Yes.
It's not even just any, it's just the white men.
There are some of those that I love so much that meant a lot to me. And also, there are other people who exist. And when you read, you get to explore, you get to learn, you get to be in somebody's mind for a little bit. And I think rom-coms are a really awesome thing for young people of any gender. Because it's just, again, being able to experience other people's point of views and to learn more about like, what does relationship look like with my friends, with somebody who I have feelings for, with like my parents. And yeah, so that was something that I really loved about Dungeons and Drama is, just being able to see my partner read it too, and for him to be like, I also love rom-coms. And that was super fun. And yeah, I loved that book. And then I also had, because like you fall in love with romance, you fall in love with Emily Henry. She is I like she's getting her she's getting the views and the attention that she deserves right now, and I'm so happy for her. My favorite book by her is Book Lovers. And that's her first one that came out, and it deals with the writing, literary industry, and it also has a sisters element. And that was something I loved so much about it. It is so funny. It is laugh out loud funny, her work is. Love that. It also, something that I had felt as I was writing How to Love You When You're Gone is I had been consuming a lot of, TV shows and movies for young adults as well. And there were so many times where, something would be portrayed as romantic that I saw as a little toxic or unhealthy or,
Yeah.
and it bummed me out a little bit just because I felt like I did see a lot of that when I was a young person and had expectations for romance and for love that were just so out there. And that is not what I have experienced in my long-term relationship. I've experienced a lot of safety, a lot of kindness, growing beside each other. He cares for me as a human being. And there is still chaos and stress and difficulties because we're human beings who are trying to relate to each other. And so I felt like I saw that a lot in Emily Henry's book, especially in Book Lovers, is relationships that were difficult and difficult choices that had to be made between characters who were still respecting each other at the end of the day. And that became something that was really important in writing How to Love You When You're Gone is we have these young people who they mean well, they want to be kind, they want to be good, and then they screw up because they're 18 and they're humans and they are just exploring these parts of their lives. And so being so what happens when you do make a mistake? When you do something that is completely inappropriate and disrespectful to somebody, how do you make that up? How do you learn from those? And how do you try to be better in the future? Because we all do the sucky stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
Have to learn from that. And so love Emily Henry for that.
Yeah. I think we learn from toxic relationships.
Yes.
I think the media likes to portray that because it's conflict. It's it angst.
Yep.
And there's angst, there's the conflict, there's the inciting incident. And enough when you don't have the inciting incident of this happened and this major thing. And my life is not a TV show in that sense. It's very interesting. And it's just, but you know what? That's the life I want to live. The anticlimactic life that I feel fun and it's just great. And make mistakes and I take responsibility. That is not sexy. That doesn't sound
exactly. Yeah.
But I think in books, because of romances has a happy ending, it's pushing authors to be more innovation and to be no, here are the green flags. And yes, we can have vibes only. There's romance that are just the vibes. They're nothing major. And sometimes you just need that little breath of cozy romance. Is yes, and it's cute playing it. You do the thing. And then you just have a great guy, a cinnamon roll, someone who's in touch with feelings. So Emily Henry has characters who have going to therapy and love that for us.
Yeah.
And they're working through the issues. We're not fixing them. And I think that's what romance does is we don't have to be their mothers. We don't have to try to raise the child. So I'm glad that you wrote this book. I'm glad you're writing these books. And you're contributing to another discourse of positive representation of joy. And the feelings give us glimmer, despite how difficult
Thank
it
you.
is.
Thank you. That means so much because I just agree with you. That is so important. And I'm so glad that's something I'm able to be a part of.
Yeah. So, Gabriela, tell us where you can find you online.
Yeah. Okay. I am all around. It's at author Gabriela G. And my name is spelled Gabriela, just one L, and then G. Yep.
Thank you, Gabriela, for being on the show.
Yes, of course. Thank you for having me. This was so much fun.
Thanks for listening to the What to Read Next. For more book lists, cozy reads, and library tips, visit the whattoreadnextblog.com. Your next great read might be waiting there.